The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is a game released on the Nintendo 64 in the year 2000. It is a direct sequel to the game Ocarina of Time. The game had a remake on the Nintendo 3DS in 2015, and there are a couple of differences in the game that I want to talk about, and why I think the original release is a better experience. Now, there's a couple of well talked about differences between the two games, so I want to talk about a couple of the changes. One of the changes everybody likes to talk about is how the Zora mask movement is so different between the two games. When I was playing the Nintendo 64 version, sometimes I was just swimming around for fun, for shits and giggles. When I played the 3DS version, I got fucking bored. Like, I was just bored playing the game. The way they implemented the swimming in the 3DS remake was the A button was a lot slower of a swimming speed, but then you could do the normal speed from the original game at the cost of your magic, which is an important resource that you kind of need. This change also made the water dungeon feel significantly harder. In the original, you could it was designed for the swimming mechanic. In the remake, you have to use your magic to get to some places, and it all feels clunky and just incorrect. Most walkthroughs of the 3DS game actually recommend you to do a side quest that gives you infinite mana for a period of time, which it's a side quest. Why should it be recommended that you have to do this? Now, I can't just be a negative Nancy all the time about it. Some of the changes in the game are really cool. One of them, the 3D for the 3DS, I think it's a really interesting gimmick, and I think it should be brought back, honestly. Another good change is the extra buttons the 3DS has. You have the option of 4 items, and the ocarina is bound to a button on the screen instead of being an item that you have to equip. The new 3DS has a little thumbstick thing that you can move the camera with. I know, it's crazy. Another cool addition the 3DS has is there's saving statues around the place, which I find unnecessary. I like how when you restarted the game it reset everything, but cool addition, I like it. Now, this is probably the most important change between the two games is the graphics. Overall, I think the 3DS game has definitely better graphics. It's definitely an upgrade, but I feel like sometimes it takes away from what the original game was. The feeling you get while playing the game between the two games, it feels really different to me. In the original graphics, the Clock Town feels like it's missing life, which it is supposed to be. You know, the moon's about to fall on the town, they've packed up and left. But in the 3D remake, the Clock Town feels a little more lively. It's probably a combination of the newer graphics, you know, filling in some of the gaps that the old ones had. There's some layout changes that has brought a couple things closer. They've shuffled a couple things around, a couple of quality life changes, and there's a wider field of vision that you get while playing the game. These changes made everything feel a little closer together and a little more connected compared to the original game, which felt lonely and isolated. I think that the changes, they changed the vibe of the game a little. A lot of the original game was very much a sign of the time. They were working with a lot of limitations, and compared to like the prequel of the game, Ocarina of Time, the town square felt very lively, and Majora's Mask was very deliberately like missing a bit of life. I feel like the 3D remake just didn't hit the same spots that the original game was trying to hit, which makes me feel like the original game was the better release of the game. The other changes, including the Zora change, makes the original game feel much more interesting to play, and it's a much more interesting experience for the game. Another thing is, they've re-released the game so many times. The Nintendo Switch has an emulator for it, the Wii U has an emulator for it. They re-released it as the Master Quest with The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker if you pre-ordered it or something. I feel like there's a lot of ways to experience the original game and the original graphics. I'm not really sure why anyone would even go for the 3DS remake instead of playing an emulation of the original game, but I do think the 3DS remake still holds up. There's a lot of it does a lot of interesting things, and well, the old game is old. Anyway, in conclusion, if you are gonna play Majora's Mask, spend hundreds of dollars on a physical copy of the original game on the Nintendo 64 because it's the cooler version of the game.